Senator from South Carolina.
Thank you. I will be responding to my good friend, Senator Sanders. Apparently, I'll be the ranking member on budget. He'll be the chairman, and I look forward to finding some common ground where we can. Today is not that day, but hope springs eternal. There are things that I think we can do on the Budget Committee that would be good for the country. So here's the other side of the story. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, the pandemic coming out of China is detected, the COVID, on the west coast of the United States. And it has just done a number on us as a nation. Over 440,000 people have died from COVID-related infections. And we finally got vaccines. They're in the pipeline. We need to get them out quicker. But I do believe that the vaccines are going to help us a lot. And to the American people who have been suffering, I think better days lie ahead, but we're not there yet. But here's what's different. February the 2nd, 2021, things changed. Up until now, we've been able as a Congress and with the White House to pass things together regarding COVID. So we've passed over $4 trillion of COVID relief in a bipartisan fashion up until today. Now, how was that done? You had a Republican president, President Trump, working with a Democratic-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate beginning of January, I guess March of last year. And here's what we were able to do together. Phase one, we approved 96-1, a coronavirus preparedness and response supplemental of 2020 was $8 billion. That was early on last year when we really didn't know what we were dealing with. Then we did $355 billion, 90-8. And then the next was $1.9 trillion. Listen to this. We spent $1.9 trillion, 96-0. So it's not like we don't see a need to spend money. 96-0, this body agreed to spend $1.9 trillion last year. After that, we did the Paycheck Protection enhancement of $355 billion by voice vote. It's not like people on this side don't see a need. We had a continuing resolution where we added another $8 billion, 84-10. In the omnibus, we did another $1.04 trillion, 92-6. So when you add all this up, we've appropriated $4 trillion to deal with the problems associated with COVID. Money for people who've been struggling, money for hospitals and doctors, money for vaccine development and distribution, direct payments, the PPP program to keep small businesses from going under that can't operate to full capacity. It's been a great program. It was bipartisan until now. Here's what I want the American people know. We've done a lot together, and of the $4 trillion we've appropriated, to date we spent $2.7 trillion. Of the Federal Reserve actions we took, allowing the Federal Reserve to help business, we had a $5.7 trillion market cap, for lack of a better term, and we've allocated $2.6 trillion. The bottom line is, of the $900 billion that we passed recently, a little over $900 billion, we've only spent 20% of the money. And here we are being asked for another $1.9 trillion. What's the difference between the first $1.9 trillion and this request? When it was first offered, the $1.9 trillion, it's the largest single appropriation, I think, maybe in the history of the country since World War II. And the fact that 96 senators could come together and pass it 96-0 tells you about the way we saw the problem. And we've been adding and adding and adding. Now we're to a point where the Biden administration is proposing $1.9 trillion of additional spending. We haven't spent the money we've allocated, nowhere near the money we've allocated. And you've got a bipartisan group of Republicans, 10, that went to the White House yesterday and said, what about a little over $600 billion see if that is enough, and I'm afraid the answer is going to be no. So what's happened here? Democratic colleagues, they've won the White House, and Biden is president. He won. It's a 50-50 Senate. The vice president makes it a Democratic-controlled body to the extent that the vice president breaks ties. And you have a smaller majority in the House than we've had in the last 20 years. But the consequence of what I've just described is that my Democratic colleagues are now in charge of everything. When it was divided government, when you had a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Democratic House, we're able to come together with overwhelming votes to help the American people. Now we find ourselves at a crossroads. Our Democratic colleagues are using a process called budget reconciliation that begins today that would allow them to pass the $1.9 trillion basically on a party line vote, a simple majority, not reaching the 60-vote milestone. The 60-vote problem was never a problem up until now because Republicans and Democrats were able to work together up until now. What changed? They've got it all. Everything we told you would happen in the election is coming true. You got one-party control of Washington, and they're seizing the moment. What a $15-hour minimum wage has to do with fighting COVID, I don't know. But I do know this. Now is the worst possible time to increase the cost on small businesses in South Carolina in the restaurant hospitality industry. You're about to hit them with 2 government mandates that are going to put them out of business. They're all struggling. A lot of states have reduced capability in terms of indoor dining. D.C., I think, last week, for the first time, you could dine indoors at 25% capacity. States all over the country have different rules about how small business operates. The tourist industry is just about squashed. So people in the hospitality industry, in the restaurant business, in the service industry, if this bill passes the way it's been proposed, are going to have a $15 per hour per employee mandate. That's going to sink them. They're going to have to lay a lot of people off because they're barely struggling barely making it as it is. So here's what we're doing to those businesses. State and local government are mandating a reduction in revenue. Why? Because you reduce the capability to earn money by reducing seating capacity and the other things associated with fighting COVID. So what does the Congress do? Do we relieve that burden by having more PPP? No. We increase your cost of doing business. This $15 an hour minimum wage increase will dramatically increase the cost of doing business to small businesses at a time they can afford it the least. And there are people out there working today that will be out of work tomorrow if this bill passes. My Democratic colleagues have taken the energy sector head on. They stopped the Keystone Pipeline. I don't know how many thousands of jobs will be affected by that, but all of these mandates and all these change in policies are making it really hard right now to employ people. So count me in for more COVID relief once I understand how the money we've previously allocated has been spent. I think continuing to spend at this level without understanding what the money in the past has done is not very responsible. We've only spent 20% of the $900 billion we passed just a few weeks ago. Now we're going to do $1.9 trillion more. Of the $4 trillion we did together, $2.7 trillion has been spent. Over $1 trillion is sitting there, not spent yet. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, and my Republican colleagues, is that this $1.9 trillion package, there's been no effort to make it bipartisan. We're spending a lot more money before we understand how the money we spent actually works. And some of the policy provisions in this package, I think, are to do more damage to the economy that's struggling to get back on its feet than good. But they have the power and they're using it. he's right, Senator Sanders. When we had this authority, we cut your taxes through budget reconciliation. That's what we did. So it's not like Republicans haven't used this process. Democrats used it pretty much to pass Obamacare. But this is one area where there's been pretty much common view of things. Taxes are different between Republicans and Democrats. You know, who decides what health care you get? There's some people like my good friend from Vermont that wants single-payer health care. That's one way of doing it. I just disagree. Everything is about trying to help people. I don't doubt the motives. I just doubt where we're headed is a good outcome for the American people. So the bottom line is, up until now, we've had bipartisanship when it comes to COVID relief. The reason that bipartisanship has stopped is because we have one-party control of the United States Senate, the House, and the White House. And here's what I think. That's going to end not well, because it's not like we don't want to help people. We just have a different view of how to help, and we'd like to let some of the money we've already appropriated go to work and see how well it works and fill in gaps where you need to fill in gaps. Count me in for more payments, direct payments, beyond $600. Count me out for giving $2,000 payments to people that make almost $200,000 a year. I think it needs to be more targeted. I don't mind having more direct payments. I'd like to make it less targeted. And I don't mind discussing raising the minimum wage when the COVID problem passes and we get back on our feet. I do mind doubling it in the middle of a pandemic. And I do believe that this $1.9 trillion package is going to do more harm than good to the American economy. And the reason we're having this debate, the way we're having this debate, is because they have unlimited power, my Democratic colleagues. You've chosen to do this. The 10 Republicans who went down to the White House, I appreciate their effort. Maybe some good will come from that. But this process we're engaged in today makes me wonder if it was worth their time. Maybe we can pull a rabbit out of the hat and find a bipartisan compromise consistent with what we've done over the last year. If not, we're going to march down the reconciliation road. We're going to take $1.9 trillion of spending and let one party spend it. We're going to have one point of view about this money. We're going to let people spend $1.9 trillion without any input from the other side of the aisle in a 50-50 divided Senate. I don't know what you got from the last election. Here's what I got. We did better in the House than I thought we would do. President Trump lost, but it was still a close election from an electoral college point of view. And the Senate is 50-50. I don't think the message from the last election was, we want Democrats to spend $1.9 trillion and deal Republicans out. That's exactly what you're doing. So it would be different if we had had a history over here of trying not to help. We were able, 96-0, to spend $1.9 trillion less than a year ago. And now we want to spend $1.9 trillion again after the money previously allocated hasn't been spent. So all I'm suggesting to my Democratic colleagues, we're going to have a different view on taxes. We're going to have a different view on health care. But this is the one area where I really do believe there's a bipartisan middle ground to be had. And to Senator Sanders, there may come a time where I will work with you to raise the minimum wage. The PPP program has been highly successful. The $600 billion proposal by Republicans has more money for that. It has more direct payments, but it's more targeted. Senator Manchin said that he wants more direct payments, but he wants it targeted to people on the lower economic end. Mike Rounds, one of our colleagues from South Dakota, got a check. So the bottom line is, I don't mind helping people, but there's got to be some sense that we can't just constantly write checks and hope one day that doesn't come back to bite us. One thing about a $15 hour minimum wage now, I think what it does It puts pressure on businesses who can't stand any more pressure. It's going to cost people jobs that have a job. It's going to do more harm than good in this environment. When you combine the mandate of increasing wages, where the $15 an hour is the least wage, and add what we're doing in terms of restricting income generation, that is a formula for disaster for small businesses. This is it. If this bill passes the way it's written, there are going to be thousands of people out of work who were previously working in a small business that's going to fold. How does that help COVID? And if you don't believe that, you're not really walking and talking to the people out there on the front lines of this economy. The tourism industry in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, has been decimated. You can't fly from one state to the other without a 2-week quarantine. Hopefully that begins to pass when we get vaccine distribution at a higher level. But people along the coast of South Carolina in the hospitality tourism business are hanging by a thread. The PPP program has been a lifeline. The last $900 billion package had a new round of PPP money. If we need more money, count me in. Again, I'd like to have a higher direct payment, but not the people that make $150,000, $200,000 in combined income. So this package is going to be devastating to the hospitality service industry. It's going to take us down a path we haven't gone before, which is a partisan approach to COVID. And I do believe, and maybe I'm wrong, that with some effort on our part, we can reconcile the difference between what our Republican colleagues proposed and what President Biden has proposed and find some middle ground like we have in the past, but it doesn't seem to be a real effort to do that. And all I can say is that the American people want us to work together for their benefit, and this will be the first time that I can recall where we spent $1.9 trillion based on one party's view of things. That's not good. That's a lot of money, and it's so unnecessary. So I would encourage Senator Sanders and my colleagues on the other side to give a chance to this negotiation, see if we can get there. I hope we can, but this is not the right way. What we're doing today is going to set in motion partisanship where there was previous bipartisanship. President Biden said he wanted to unify the nation. You've picked the one topic that we've been pretty unified on, and you're going to disrupt that unification. The first COVID package had a $600 federal supplement to state unemployment benefits. And I looked at that. My family was in the restaurant business. Senator Sanders gave statistics about support of the public. You're literally paying people more not to work than work. I want to help people because they're out of work, no fault of their own because of COVID. But when we went to $600, we were paying people $23 an hour, I think, in South Carolina not to work. That did not go over well with the public at large, and we're trying to reduce that federal supplement down to $300, not $600, to help people who are out of work, but not to incentivize people not to go back to work when the economy's beginning to open. So in this package, we go back to $400, and it goes all the way to September, which means it's going to be harder to hire people back when the economy does show signs of reopening, and it's beginning to show signs of coming back. The faster the vaccine is distributed, the more people that get inoculated, the sooner we can go back to business. So I would just say to my Democratic colleagues, you've chosen this path. All of us are going to vote no to $1.9 trillion spending, not because we don't care, it's because we would like to see what the money we spent in the past is doing before we add another $1.9 trillion. A lot of the provisions in your proposal we think have very little, if anything, to do with COVID, and it would be unfortunate if we go down this road, but we're not in charge. Now, 2022 will be here before you know it. Hopefully by 2022, we'll have the American people build up immunity to COVID, and our economy will come back the way it was before the COVID pandemic. Before the pandemic, the economy was doing well for all sectors of the American people. I think one of the things that helped was that tax cut that Senator Sanders opposed. But we can have political debates about that. The point I'm trying to make is up until this moment in time, we've been able to achieve overwhelming bipartisan support dealing with the COVID problem that we all face. It really is disappointing and disheartening that we're going to abandon that model when I don't think we have to. But that will be up to my Democratic colleagues. That will be up to President Biden. And finally, a message to President Biden. You won. We lost. You're the legitimate President of the United States. I want to help you where I can. I just got a briefing about what you're proposing in Afghanistan. I think it's darn good. There are plenty of things we can do around here together on foreign policy and domestic policy. It doesn't have to be a fight to the death all the time. An infrastructure bill is there for the taking. I think most Americans realize our roads and our bridges and our ports need upgrading, and count me in for that. There are things that we can do. But President Biden, you can do something too. You can say, slow down in the Senate, slow down in the House. I'm going to see if I can find middle ground. I'm telling you right now that $1.9 trillion being spent the way this bill envisions is not responsible. We haven't spent the money we've previously allocated. There's a lot in this bill that will cost us jobs at a time we need jobs, and you're not going to help the COVID crisis by putting somebody out of work because of a government mandate that business can't afford to fulfill because they're hanging by a thread. So we'll have some time in the next couple of days to talk about what's in the package, what's not, our view of how this thing should all unfold. But I will yield back here with a sense of optimism. To my Republican colleagues who went to talk to the White House, count me in. If you can work something out, I'd like to be able to help. It's not like there's not some more money that can be spent, but this approach and the way you're spending the money, the amount of money in this approach, I think is going to make this place less unified. If you're looking for unity, this is a lousy way to get it. With that, I yield.